This podcast is brought to you by the School of Advanced Study, University of London.
We are very pleased to welcome one of our PhD students, Mr. Wael Saghir, who actually did the LLM with us 2 years ago, and he is one of those people who took his LLM, and he is now doing his PhD on the export credit agencies. You know, export credit agencies are important institutions from the home states of the exporters of the capital and in foreign investment. So Wael will explain, I think you have like a, half an hour or so just to outline what you do as your research to our LLM students. So our LLM students, on top of the lectures which we give them and seminars which we have on the module on the law of international trade and finance, we have organized some, presentation by our own PhD students here to add to your knowledge what they do and the viability of their PhD thesis, and also they will be benefiting from your comments. Okay, so go on, Wael, and explain to our friends and the LLM students what you are doing in your PhD and what you're going to achieve. It's a very friendly session, so take it easy and just, present your work here. I mean, it was a short notice to Wael. We didn't know that, it could be arranged today. But anyway, we have Wael and you are here, so please go ahead.
Okay. As Dr. Bagheri said, I'm writing about export credit agencies. I'm writing about the relationship between foreign direct investment and export credit agencies and how foreign investors are protected. First of all, I'm still in my early stages of the research, so
you want to move further here to make sure that you are
well, in the beginning, I'm going to talk about foreign direct investment, what types of foreign direct investment exists, and what is the threshold to be considered a foreign investment to be considered as a direct investment. Normally,
they have taken a module on
I know 2 years ago.
So
yes,
they have taken it as well. So if you want to move on to the further exactly what you do, because they know the foreign investment.
Okay.
So you go further to exactly what is the role and place of the ECAs in promotion of foreign investment, including foreign direct investment.
Okay, great. So since you know about the foreign investment already, and since you know the reason behind foreign investment, I assume that also you know the risks associated with foreign investment, and that there are 3 types of risks. In later stage, I'm going to distinguish between the borderline that lies between those 3 types of risks. But just briefly, to remind you, there are political risks, commercial risks, and financial risks. For minimizing these risks, home state and host state have coordinated between each other a number of mechanisms to eliminate or to reduce such risks faced by foreign investors. For example, they have signed and ratified bilateral investment treaties. Those are directed at reducing the risks, and they have clauses that I'm sure that you've been aware of, such as the umbrella clause and the most favored nation clauses. Under any circumstances, those bilateral investment treaties are a mean of protection. They would one of the starting points to protect foreign investments. It should be noted that one of the first movements to protect foreign investors was the Harvard draft in 1929. It was entitled "The International Responsibility for States for Injury to Aliens," and they have introduced back then the right for foreign investors to hold the host state liable for infringement of their property rights. Other than bilateral investment treaties, there are the multilateral investment treaties, like the TFEU that is present here in the European Union, the Treaty of Functioning of the European Union. There is also the NAFTA, Mercosur, the Andean Sub-Regional Common Market, ANCOM. All of those are just the examples of the mechanisms that were established between home state and host state to reduce risks associated with foreign investment. There's also an international movement between, for establishing international organizations. For example, the World Bank have established the MIGA in 1985. The MIGA is the Multilateral Investment Guarantee Agency. They are responsible for ensuring the foreign investors against political risks that are associated when investing in developing countries. So their major role, the major role of MIGA is to promote foreign investment in developing countries. This is a movement towards protection, post-investment protection, pre-investment protection, sorry. As for post-investment protection, exit was established in order to settle disputes between host state and foreign investors. Putting those aside, the relationship and the coordination between home state and host state still continues, and is now we can now talk about the export credit agencies and Exim banks. Exim banks and export credit agencies were a movement from the home state to protect their own investors who are willing to invest abroad. Export credit agencies are responsible for promoting investment of their investors abroad through exporting their goods and services to foreign countries. They insure against certain types of political risks that are not covered by commercial insurance organizations. Exim Bank, on the other hand, offers similar services to as for the export credit agencies, but the only difference lies that Exim Banks offers for importers as well, for local importers, similar services to those offered by export credit agencies. So it can be concluded from this short presentation of export credit agencies and Exim banks that they're both the different face for the same coin. It shall be noted that in the beginning, a coordination between home state and host state in the 1838 was present through diplomatic protection. Diplomatic protection was a mean of coordination between both states through the exchange of notes, diplomatic notes. An example of that would be the case of the Pastry War that happened in Mexico. It was between Mexico and France in 1838 and 1839, where the Mexican government have stripped French bakers from their rights, from their property rights. And due to that, after exchange of diplomatic notes, the French government waged war against Mexico. Going back to export credit agencies. Export credit agencies have can be distinguished into three different models. We have public export credit agencies, private export credit agencies, and quasi-governmental export credit agencies. As far as the public export credit agencies, there are two types of public export credit agencies. The first one is completely owned and operated by the government. An example of that would be the ECGD that was established in the UK, which is the first export credit agency established in the world in 1919. The other type of public export credit agency is owned by the government, but the services of offering insurance is delegated to the private sector. This is present in Germany, for example, where the German government have delegated its right to cover and insure against political risk to Euler Hermes and PwC jointly, and this is known as the Hermes cover. The quasi-governmental export credit agency is one that is owned between the home state, between the government of the home state and the private sector as well. A good example would be the SACE of Italy. It's a subsidiary that is owned by the Casa di Depositi e Prestiti. This company is owned by the Italian government and by the private banking sector of Italy.
Called Saghir, yeah?
Yeah, Saghir. The third type of export credit agency is the private export credit agencies. They can be referred to, or they can be called as credit insurance companies. They are absolutely private. They offer their services to all types of investors, with no regards to their nationality or if they belong to a home state or host state. This is as far as the nature of export credit agencies. Now, the importance of talking about the nature of export credit agencies lies in the services that they offer. In the future, in my research, I am going to talk about how different the services that are offered from one export credit agency to another, how they differ, and depending on the nature of it, how they differ and why do they differ. It is also the purpose of my research to distinguish how this nature of those export credit agencies, how do they affect the corporate governance of the ECAs. For example, from what I've found so far, all of them, they share the common grounds of transparency and disclosure. But with regards to appointing managers, each type of export credit agency differs from one to another. This is true because public export credit agencies have their managers appointed by the government, whereas private export credit agencies function like a regular company. So this is a little bit different from one country to another, and again from one export credit agency to another. Basically, this is my research so far. I'm still progressing in my research, and I'm open to any questions.
Okay, are you going to ask one question or two questions? Because we don't have much time, but I mean, I think we could have someone to ask a question.
I don't know much about the ECGD in the UK. Is it? I'm sure it's a wonderful organisation, but is it a wonderful organisation? Is it?
Well, so far it is the first organization. It is the first export credit agency in the world.
Well, yeah.
It was the first one that is established over here, and their services are quite unique. They are good in promoting foreign investment, in promoting British investors to invest abroad. They offer good services competitive to those of insurance organizations, commercial insurance organizations. The main reason behind having a governmental-owned body to give such services was the lack of protection from the insurance organizations, from commercial insurance organizations, in respect of protection, political risk protection, put it this way. So that's why they were created. And as far as I know, and as far as my research is going, it is quite good in doing so. It is hedging those risks that foreign investors are facing.
Because, of course, it's not the only one. They're the other two types. And I was just wondering why, if the ECGD was the first one, why hasn't the whole world copied it? And the answer is other places have different ways of doing it.
Exactly. Each country has its own way of approaching and of hedging risks. Some found that involving the private sector would be of better profit for them, because then the private sector is going to create more competition in this field, which would mean better services for investors. Others prefer to have a totally governmental agency. And some of them have a combination of a governmental agency and as well commercial, private commercial agencies. So it depends really from one country to another and for the needs of each country. Because if you have a heavily exporting country, then you would need more than one model. But if you don't have that mentality of exporting countries, if you don't have a big exporting nation, then you wouldn't need to have different models present in the same state.
And is there any really very big difference between countries located in different geography or with a totally different culture, especially with very different characteristic of the industry? Not very different.
Well, now, for example, there is the OPEC in the United States, and you have also the Export-Import Bank in the United States. They're both considered as export credit agencies, though Exim banks are also directed for importers as well. But under any circumstance, each one of those agencies have different sectors that they cover. So it is not only true that there is only one standardized list of services that all export credit agencies offer around the world, but it is the opposite. Each country has its own sectors that it promotes, it wants to promote, it wants to cover. So, and this is what's happening in the United States, for example. This is what's happening also in England, for example. There are a list of sectors that they cover. They don't cover all sectors. So it depends on the nation as well that the investor wants to go to invest in. For example, going back again to OPEC in the United States, they have a list of countries that they cover for their services. And each country has its own specific characteristics with own specific sectors that they are willing to cover against. So, if this is answering your question.
Also, what has your research revealed about the efficacy of export credit agencies in the developing world, particularly, and I'm concerned about Africa? You know, has it really been, you know, a great success in Africa? And even following his question, yes. Is there any, you know, idiosyncrasy or peculiarity about, you know, the role of the export credit agencies in countries like Nigeria and so on?
With regard to your first question, I haven't got into that topic yet. As far as the promotion in Africa, promotion of investment in Africa, there are some export credit agencies, depending on the countries again. In the United States, there is in OPEC, they offer list of services and list of insurance services that are directed for investors who are willing to invest in the sub-regional Sahara and in certain nations in Africa. I'm not sure if Nigeria was part of it. I need to make sure out of that. But they have some services directed to Africa. And as far as I know, that there are some companies who are using those services to go there so that they can hedge the risks that they may be associated when investing in Nigeria or investing in other African countries.
I think one of the things I wish you to address is this distinction between political risk and commercial risk.
Yes.
And also the importance of ECAs as kind of a home countries supporting foreign investment, yes. Not the host country. So this is the distinction feature of the ECAs, and also what is really political risk compared to the commercial risk. For example, imposition of exchange control, or for example, devaluation of a currencies by a central bank. Is it considered as a political risk or commercial risk?
Well, as I mentioned in the beginning, there are three types of risks. We have political risk, commercial risk, and financial risks. Political risk are expropriation, nationalization of property rights, acts of war, civil unrest, and change of regulations and laws. When it comes to commercial risk, it is always related to market-related risks and to contract-related risks. As far as financial risks, you have the currency fluctuation, you have the interest rates, and you have inflation rates. These are all related to financial risks. Now, in some countries, you can consider the financial risk to be part of the political risk rather than just being a standalone risk, because when it comes to currencies, you have countries that have their currencies pegged and controlled by them, and you have currencies that are free-floating currencies. So you cannot consider a free-floating currency to be part of to have the risk to be considered as a political risk, because the political environment does not get involved in the fluctuation of the currency. Whereas if we're talking about a pegged currency or a controlled currency, then in that situation, and only in that case, we can consider the currency risk to be part of a political risk. So this is with regard to currency. With regards to inflation, now again, it's the same notion applies. If you have the local government interfering into manipulating the inflation rates, then okay, this can be considered part of a political risk. Otherwise, if it was due to economical unrest, if it was due to anything that the government has not interfered in, then we can consider it to be a standalone risk and to be considered as a financial risk.
I mean, the other thing which you mentioned in your work, I guess, the concept of scale, how the home states and host states actually interact.
Yes.
Can you elaborate on
sure.
that?
Well, this is with regard to the cooperation between home state and host state and protection of foreign investors. Now, if the host state made laws and regulations that are proper and adequate, which have the ends to protect foreign investors as much as possible, then we can consider, then the role of the home state would be much less than the normal situation. So the interference of the home state through export credit agencies or through minimizing the risks would not be as big as if the case was when we have laws and regulations that do not protect foreign investors. So, and the case applies also vice versa. So
if the host country has already put in place mechanisms, regulations, commitment on the international conventions, joining, exit and things like that, to promote attraction of the foreign investment, to attract foreign investment, then the home state of the investors will feel less pressure to actually provide protection to them. You see, so the more protection at the host state, the less protection from home state. So the premium, the insurance premium, the protection which ECAs are going to afford will be less. Am I right?
Yes, sir.
So we would like to thank Wael for presenting his part of his PhD thesis today, and we wish him very good luck in his completing the PhD. He's just finished 1 year, so it's not it's just the earlier stages of the PhD. So thank you very much.